such a pleasure to sit down with the first executive director of Scarritt Bennett Center, who's none other than Maxine Beach, Dr. Maxine Beach.
Today, we journey back in time to celebrate the remarkable history of the Scarritt Bennett Center and pay homage to the enduring legacy of Scarritt College, an institution whose story is woven into the very fabric of educational empowerment and cultural enrichment. The founding of Scarritt College is not just a chapter in a history book, it's a testament to the transformative power of education and a beacon of progressive thought in the field of Christian education and missionary training. In the late 19th century, amidst the societal reconstructions in the United States, the Methodist Episcopal Church South recognized an urgent need. It was a period marked by significant shifts, where a thirst for knowledge and cultural understanding was growing, particularly in the realms of religious education and social service. The vision was clear: establish an institution dedicated not only to the intellectual growth of young women but also to prepare them for missionary work and community leadership. This vision came to fruition in 1892 with the establishment of the Scarritt Bible and Training School in Kansas City, Missouri. Named in honor of Nathan Scarritt, a pioneer in the realm of community involvement and Christian commitment, the school was a progressive leap forward. It represented hope, opportunity, and responsibility, the chance for women to learn, grow, and lead in areas previously beyond their reach. But the story didn't stop there. With a continued expansive vision, the institution relocated to Nashville, Tennessee, in 1924, re-emerging as Scarritt College for Christian Workers. This move signified more than a change of address, it marked a profound deepening of its mission. The college bravely delved into social issues of the time, intertwining religious education with courses in race relations, economic justice, and international issues, promoting a holistic approach rarely seen during that era. This dedication to intercultural understanding and the promotion of peace and justice formed the bedrock of the college's ethos. Scarritt became a nexus where diverse voices, cultures, and religious traditions could converge in a shared pursuit of knowledge and service. Here, women were not just students, they were trailblazers, shaping their destinies, and in turn, impacting communities, societies, and nations. As we reflect on the founding of Scarritt College, we realize that it is more than a monument of the past, it's a continuing inspiration, reminding us that education, at its best, is a courageous and transformative force, one that not only enlightens minds but also empowers individuals to embark on a journey of meaningful change in the world. For many decades, Scarritt College was a hub of education and advocacy. However, as the years passed, the world changed, and the college saw a decline in enrollment, like many such specialized institutions in the late 20th century. The economic pressures and shifting landscape of higher education led to the college's eventual closure in 1988. It could have been the end of an era, but the legacy of Scarritt was too potent to disappear into the annals of history.
We knew that the college was shaky. We knew, and by then it was a graduate school, it had dropped its college status. And it was talking about future, and we knew it was talking with various seminaries about what future plans might be. And we were watching very closely about what was happening because we knew we had a claim on the property. That we is an editorial we, meaning Women's Division.
When I received the call from Dr. Welch saying that the board had made their decision to sell the campus and move to Duke, I knew we had a lot of work ahead of us.
The Women's Division exercised its legal right and gained ownership of the property on June 1, 1988. They began renovating and remodeling many of the buildings. Assets of the college were used to establish the Scarritt Foundation, which entered into relationship with the Women's Division to create what is now Scarritt Bennett Center. The Scarritt Bennett Center name honors the founders of the original Scarritt Bible and Training School, Dr. Nathan Scarritt and Belle Bennett. The new name recognized the leadership contribution of women and became a symbol of the new program as Scarritt entered its second century. The transformation from Scarritt College to the Scarritt Bennett Center marked a renaissance period for this historic institution. Rather than closing its doors, the center opened them even wider to a more inclusive and diverse audience. It transitioned gracefully into a nonprofit education and retreat center, committed to promoting social justice, equality, and empowerment of individuals from all walks of life. While it might be simpler to define Scarritt Bennett by what it is, perhaps the truest representation of its essence is found in what it does, in the lives it touches, and the changes it cultivates. Our commitment to social justice, a thread that runs intrinsically through every program we offer. Through events, workshops, and panels, the center engages both the mind and heart, challenging participants to confront systemic issues such as racism, sexism, and economic disparity. We don't just encourage passive observation, we foster active participation, dialogue, and, indeed, confrontation with difficult truths, providing the tools and knowledge necessary to effect change. Education, specifically with an emphasis on women's empowerment, represents another pillar in the foundation of the Scarritt Bennett Center. We hold steadfast in the belief that empowering women is not merely a matter of rights but a pivotal strategy in social and economic development. Through leadership programs, educational workshops, and supportive community development, the center provides a springboard for women's voices and leadership capacity. What sets the Scarritt Bennett Center apart is perhaps our community approach. It's not just an institution for individuals but a collaborative, communal effort. Volunteers, local leaders, and global thinkers alike converge in this nexus of thought and action, contributing to a vibrant community that believes in the transformative power of collective action. The Scarritt Bennett Center is more than its picturesque campus, it's a microcosm of the world we strive for. A world of equality, justice, and mutual respect. Every workshop, program, or retreat is a step towards that future, and everyone is invited to partake in this journey. Whether you're here to find your voice, strengthen it, or lend it to others who might not yet have found theirs, you're exactly where you need to be. We attempt great things for God, and we expect great things from God.
We are so excited. I'm Sondrea Tolbert, the Executive Director here at Scarritt Bennett, and it is a pleasure to have a sit down with you as the pioneer, as the living legend, as the legacy builder that we are most certainly honoring you, and such an honor to sit down with you. So if you will, Maxine, just tell me about your spiritual journey. What led you to Scarritt?
Well, I grew up in Wyoming, Iowa, and Nebraska. I was way out in little rural farming communities. And I went I joined a youth group because the Methodist youth group was more exciting than the Presbyterians. So I became a Methodist. And I heard a preacher one day say that, you know, God is wanting to work with you, some of you. I thought, I don't know what that means. What does that mean? But I felt this sense. I thought, wow. I mean, I could have a purpose. I could be, I don't know. I didn't even call it a call then because I didn't even know what that meant. So I asked around. I was figuring out how to go to college because we didn't have a lot of money, and had decided I would go to this little junior college in Scottsbluff, Nebraska. It was just one building, and probably not the best academic status in the world, but I thought I can do this, and I thought, well, I don't know what this is. So I asked a DS or a minister. I said, well, what does it mean if a woman feels like they have a calling? And he said, He said, well, you know, there's some crazy women out in the eastern part of the state that think they can run churches, but I wouldn't do that if I were you. My best advice is for you to marry a minister.
Oh, wow.
I thought, oh, that can't be what this means. So I wrote a letter to the Board of Global Ministries in 475 Riverside Drive in New York City. And somehow my little handwritten message, what does a woman do, blah, 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 ended up with Aline Ford And she was this amazing staff person who not only answered my little letter, but became my guide.
Oh, wow.
And my mentor from afar. And somehow got me to be interviewed by the personnel committees to become a deaconess candidate. I found out later that they don't do that with people that aren't out of college. I mean, I barely had 2 years. And I said, well, so they accepted me, and I said, well, didn't even know for sure what that meant. But part of the bargain was they would send me to Scarritt.
Oh, wow.
So I took my trunk, my little bit of stuff, got on a train in western Nebraska, went to Lincoln, had to change stations. I think about it now, and I have no idea how my little 19-year-old
Good find.
figured it out. Got up to another station, brought the train into Nashville.
Oh, wow.
And I just, it was mind-blowing. It was challenging. When I sat in Whiteman Chapel, I realized it was really the only good organ I'd ever heard. I'd never been much in a city, and I had diversity for me had been some of the Mexican laborers that had stayed in our area. And so I never really dealt with a lot of things. But Alice Cobb became my
Guide.
somebody said, well, is she like your mother? And I said, oh no, Alice Cobb wasn't anybody's mother. Alice Cobb was a driving force. She was my mentor. I actually worked with her all the time. The other thing that happened is I went to work at Centenary Community College in North Nashville. First whole room full of black people I'd ever been with.
Okay.
Little kids, helping them strap on their roller skates to run around the roller skate rink. And mind-boggling kinds of experiences. The courses here opened me up. I realized that so I ended up here, and I was here for 2 years. It totally changed my life.
Totally changed your life. What would you say, how did Scarritt prepare you for your ministry?
Well, the other person in my life at that time was Bill Barnes. And I took my regular courses my first year here. The second year, Alice Cobb and Bill Barnes were designing courses to become an urban track in church and community. Because they knew first of all, I had already been working with Bill Barnes at Carroll Street when he tried to integrate that white church, and half the congregation walked out, and the conference said, well, he's going to do it again. What are we going to do with him? So Bill I had gotten to know him and Alice and knew these classes they were putting together. So I did all the urban ministry classes that they would let me take, and worked with, continued to work. One of the great joys of that whole experience was Alice, Dr. Cobb would take me with her for the committee meetings that were forming Edge Hill.
At Edge Hill.
They finally decided that, well, let Bill try to start one. He'll wreck another one if we don't. So I sat in this room of black professionals, doctors, professors from the Div School, white board members from across the street. I mean, this really interesting group of people who believed we could have an integrated church in Nashville. And I think that was so powerful of an image that people, when I got here, the sit-ins were done, but we were still a very segregated Nashville, terribly segregated. So I learned so many things about that. And so Dr. Cobb knew about this Methodist inner city parish in Kansas City, Missouri, and she wanted to bring Hal Garman, who was the director of that, down to talk to the urban people that were interested in the urban people. And so she gave me her car keys and said, you can be his driver. So I spent picked him up at the airport, spent time with him, and so I'm taking him back to the airport. He said, "So what are you going to do now? You're about to graduate." I said, "Well, I'd actually like to work for you."
Oh, wow.
Maybe I said with you. Not sure. But he said, "Oh no, we're only hiring US2s," which was the short-term mission group in our church at that time. And I said, "I can't do that because I'm already a deaconess candidate." And he said, "Well, sorry, that you know." Anyway, I got a call that week, and he said, "Well, we'd like for you to come up and interview." And they created something called a KC2.
Oh.
Still didn't give me much money and housing, and you treated me like a US2, but I was a KC2. And they had just brought Saul Alinsky's organization in to teach community organizing.
Okay.
So I became a neighborhood worker, community organizer, knocked on doors, walked up to people and find out what's going on in this neighborhood. I mean, I learned community organizing 101. Knock on doors, get 2 people together, get 4 people together, take a busload down to demand what you need. I mean, it was that. But I never would have even thought to do that. I wouldn't have had the courage. I think that's a great question, because I think one of the things, 2 things I know I learned here. Lay people can do it. You don't have to be ordained, and lay people should do it. And you gotta stay true. If you know something is the way it's supposed to be and it's not that way, then you gotta work for it. And I became just overwhelmed with what I found about racial injustice that in Nebraska I hadn't really experienced in the same way, except on the TV.
That's right. Yeah, you're right in the heart of Nashville, right after the sit-ins. You come here in 64 as a 19-year-old, graduated in 66, still segregated in Nashville.
Absolutely.
And Bill Barnes was definitely on the cutting edge of all of the community organizing and getting folks together and integrating and affordable housing and just the whole nine.
Right.
And to have professors like Alice Cobb and Bill Barnes right here at Scarritt during that time.
It was just a convolution of what I didn't even know I needed.
I think that's what I've sat down with a couple of alums, and that just has been the experience that I hear, that when they arrived here at Scarritt, that the mixture of the people and the students as well as the professors kind of just open your mind to a brand new world, that Scarritt has this both local and global impact, because it was the first doing international students before anybody was doing international students.
Some of the international students realized I cut my own hair, so I became the hairdresser for
the hairdresser.
I used to get these cute little trinkets they give me for but yeah, you're right. And we would have formal dining. I don't know if you've heard about our dining experience.
Yes, I love. Tell me about your experience, because I've been hearing about the formal dining experiences.
Well, first of all, you never wore your dungarees into the dining hall, ever. So, but there would be Wednesday night and Sunday, I think, we were supposed to dress up for. But there were several Indian students at that time, and sometimes they'd put us in their saris so that we could wear them for the international experience, right?
Because I heard you guys had international dinners, and so that you could experience what the other students were doing.
Right. Well, and the whole cooking thing was international for me. I'd never seen grits or some of the other things that popped up. But the wonderful people. The people that I learned probably more, as much, from some of our the people that worked in the kitchen.
Oh wow!
They were, they give us a big hug. They became our mamas. There was an embracing that was for me. First of all, I've had jobs that make me feel like I'm an extrovert, but I'm really not. I'm content and a little shy. At that time, I was painfully shy. And so to be with people that were enthusiastic and all of that. So, sometimes I tell people that Scarritt for me was a finishing school.
Oh, wow. Oh, yes.
Because I learned how to sit properly at the table. And we had assigned seats. There was a seating arrangement that came up for each week because they wanted to sit with different people.
Oh, I didn't realize that.
Isn't that interesting? Had assigned seats, and if you were at the head of the table, your job was to maintain the conversation and to serve the food. If you were at the end of the table, you had to go get the food.
Oh, wow.
So you would go out and get the food on your tray, bring it back, sit it down in front of the person at the head of the table, and they would have the plates all stacked up, and they would serve it, and we would pass
That's it.
And their job was to maintain the conversation.
Oh, so truly the community dinners, and that's what we've been trying to do, is kind of like, we had this concept of legacy forward, of looking at, just some of the culture that was done here.
I don't know when
and
that
moving
stopped,
it,
but I know
yeah,
that was,
so the community lunches are kind of like in that vein of having people come from all over the city and sit down, have a meal,
right.
and
There's
just
something,
talk.
well, Methodists love to eat together. So.
I think church people,
But
period,
we would all
love to
wait
eat
for
together.
the seating arrangement to come out
see
for the
who's
next
gonna be at the
week,
table.
to see who we were eating with that week.
Oh, wow. Because you
had forgotten about that, but that was a part of being a part of a community where there were no cliquey tables. There were cliques, I'm sure, but you ate with different people. You were assigned who you would eat with.
That's interesting. This is the first time I've heard that.
Yeah, I haven't heard that story.
Yeah, that's the first time I've heard that story. Yeah. So in being an alum and then getting the call or the nudging, or how does it happen that you become the first? The school closes in '88, and the women, United Methodist Women, say, hey, no, we got to keep the dream alive of Belle Harris Bennett and Barbara Campbell and Joyce Soul and the rest of the folks up in New York kind of formulated the committee to see what the possibilities were.
Right.
And
reminding them we have first op.
And we have first op, and they can't sell the buildings away. They can't move the Duke. They can't do, they can't do any of that. Right. And coming down and doing that. Well, how did you get to be the ED? First executive director?
That's a really good question. I think it surprised everybody because I had not been back. I'd been to campus one time because I wanted my kids to meet Alice Cobb. So we were on a little tour around. I don't know why we were down here, but I had talked to Dr. Cobb. I wanted her to meet my family. So I have pictures of my kids when they're not too big in the arches. But I married a minister.
You did follow the advice then.
I tried to convince him that he was a church history professor or something. But no, I married a minister, and we moved to New England.
Oh, okay.
And I had babies. I had 2 daughters, and then I had worked really hard. And that's another thing that happened while I was here, is that I became aware of the war in Vietnam in a way that I felt was unfair to what we were doing to Vietnamese and to it. Fellowship of Reconciliation and the Friends, both of them used to come and actually give lectures and just informal things right here in this building. And so when we were out on Cape Cod, actually. My husband was serving 2 little churches out on the end of the Cape. And I became aware of what was happening with orphans in Vietnam, because wherever we send our soldiers, unfortunately, we end up with orphans. And if they're not part of a family, then they are orphans. And some of them really were orphans. But there were orphanages that were just begging for stuff. And so I rallied a whole bunch of churches in New England that summer to use the vacation Bible schools to get stuff that we could put on a truck and on a boat and send to Vietnam. So I did that. I had little jobs here and there, but mostly I was just a volunteer and minister's wife, which also had its blessings because people assume that you're okay. Yeah, even if you're not, they assume it. Yeah. So anyway, I worked on that, and I remember the day I went into my husband's office. He was writing a sermon or something profound, I'm sure, and I said, there's one more thing we could do. And I said we could adopt a child.
Okay.
So we started the process of bringing one orphan from Vietnam, and worked with an agency and went through that whole process. But then we went to Africa. So we had these 3 kids, little Asian Vietnamese and my 2 blonde-haired daughters, and the Board of Global Ministries recruited us to go to Africa for a term. We thought we might be there longer than a term, but it worked out that it was just the 3 years. When we came back, I said, okay, I'm going back to school. I had, all I had was my undergraduate degree from here, which actually served me very, very well, but I decided I really wanted to be in theological education as a layperson.
Okay.
So then I had to find faculty who remembered me from 20 years ago or whatever it was. So I went down the list. Some were dead, some had moved. John Johnsberg was in Russia, and I had tried to get a hold of Alice Cobb and was not able to do that for some reason. But then I finally found her, and so I said, "Would you help me to get into graduate school?" Of course. So I ended up. I don't know who else I asked. I don't think there was anybody else I could find. I was 37. Maybe, I don't know, something like that. I mean, I had 3 kids. I was, the whole bit. This is a long way of answering your question, but I am getting there.
Yeah, because it's all the part of the journey. I mean, God uses it all the experiences.
So I ended up at Harvard for my Master's of Theological Studies and had just a wonderful time there. It was academically rigorous. I started the language work that I knew I needed if I was going to do a PhD in Bible. But the PhD at Harvard was incredibly linguistic, and that was not my real forte. So I went across the river to Boston University and worked on the PhD.
Okay.
In the middle of the time that I was at Boston University, I heard about what was going on at Scarritt. Because to be really truthful, I had kind of lost track. I mean, I had a life.
Yeah.
I was doing things. But it brought up all these wonderful memories of how important. And no, I never denied that. I mean, I used to talk about. I learned to be a layperson, and to be okay to be a layperson at Scarritt Bennett, and I learned, to fight for what you believed. But I never even thought about it not being there. So.
Right.
So anyway, I wrote a letter to the women's division. And said, I'm a graduate of the school, and I'm really glad that you all are figuring out maybe how to save it because we love it. And if you're ever going to hire anybody as a professor of Bible, I'd love to be considered. And I get a letter back saying, well, it's nice that you're interested. The only person we're hiring now is an executive director. I thought, well, I wonder what they do. You probably wondered that.
I'm still wondering.
So they flew me down here and a bunch of other people. There were a whole bunch of us at a hotel, and we looked around and realized we recognized some people. They were probably all here interviewing for the job. And they interviewed us, I don't know, 6 or 7 of us one day. And they asked us to stay by our phone because they might want a follow-up interview. So I get a call, they're going to do a follow-up interview the next day. So I do the follow-up interview. And they said, well, if you want to go back to the hotel, they had us in some hotel, we'd like to talk to you before you go back on the plane. So they offered me the job over the phone
while you're at the hotel. Oh, wow.
And I thought, I don't know. Can I do this job? Wonder what this job really is. But I thought, okay, I know the tradition. And I know the value of that tradition in today's world because I've been doing it. I've been doing it. And if we can train laity and be of comfort to clergy, and we can open up new people to the possibility of this tradition. You know, I can maybe teach some Bible on the side. But but then on the plane going home, I thought, oh, let's see, now we've got a 78 bathroom. No, I'm counting bathrooms. And I thought, do I really want to be responsible for that many bathrooms?
You're talking about, and I'm talking about the rooms. I'm like, oh, how many rooms? 139, and I gotta be.
But I came and it was absolutely exhaustingly wonderful. They'd already taken reservations and we didn't have the kitchen finished.
Oh, wow.
And I thought, well, we got to hurry up because there's people coming. And so I had a woman working who, she had a big old book. She was writing things in. I had heard about software. I thought,
because this is 1988. This is 1988, 89. So it's like,
gotta be a better way. This is a good way to make mistakes. So we had a limited staff, but we had people that really wanted to make it work. I think the woman that was taking the reservations had been hired by the limited staff of the women's division that had come in just to get things started. Yeah. So but things weren't done. I was telling people that there were people on the roof of the chapel doing that slate up there so long they thought they were staff, and they would come to our barbecues when I would be feeding the staff out here to make them feel good. But that's, Ogburn we're still working with an interior design person to figure out what to do with Ogburn. And Fondren was just being designed by the architects. And we knew we wanted lots of rooms upstairs that could be both big and breakout, and so that was pretty easy. We actually had a little gift shop up there too. Oh, wow. We used to have all of the serve and all the third world empowerment from, I don't know what they all are, but there was a bunch of people that had stuff from third world developing
that they were selling. I remember. Okay.
Right. And books and things. Anyway, I started putting stuff together, and it was a challenge and then people started coming and we still weren't ready. We still didn't have a kitchen, but we made these commitments. So I asked this, we worked around and had people looking for caterers. We couldn't find anybody that would cater for the price these women's division had decided they were going to charge for this because they wanted to get it started. They'd lowered the price down really low, and it was we decided that we could do lunch if we could get somebody to cater dinner. Okay. So we went and we'd buy big trays of cold cuts at the grocery store. And the electricity over there was still not working well, so we blew a fuse every time we plugged something in. So we had hot pots all over the place warming up soup. And we'd bring it all over. So everybody did food when we were doing food.
Everybody had
I don't care what your job is. You're making soup. You're going to serve. One of my interesting stories about that is I served food because we were all doing what we needed to do, and I'm helping the woman who, I never tell United Methodist who it was because a lot of them would know her. And she was one of the heads of one of the agencies that was here. And she said, well, I don't know. This is not what we expected. And I said, well, she didn't know who I was. I said, I'm so sorry. You know, we're doing our best, but she was just nasty, and you know, but they ate. I mean, nobody went away hungry. So about 6-8 months later, the group came back. So I'm in my office then. I actually could sit at my desk. I wasn't making soup, and I hear her out there with my brand new administrative assistant saying, "Can I meet the director?" I don't know who the director is. I've never met her. And she said, "Well, let me see if she's available." So she came in. I said, "Oh yeah, sure, show her in." She came in, and her mouth must have dropped all the way to the floor. Oh. But that's what it was like to start, because we knew we had to work hard. And this place has always required people to work hard.
Very hard. This always required people.
This is a place you
don't come to rest here. You don't come to rest. So one of your work hards was the designing of the Harambe, correct?
Yes. Thank you for asking me about that. That was, the architects had this design up that would have been the long way. It was a stage kind of thing down on this end, and lots, a center aisle, lots of chairs. I don't even think it was elevated, maybe a little bit elevated, but not much. And I said, "Oh, this is boring. This isn't going to work. Can't we do something kind of circular?" The guy looked at me like I'd come off a strange planet. And I said, "No, just a little bit. I know you can't do a whole circle in here, but wouldn't it be nice?" And I gave him this vision. He said, "Well," and I said, "We could have a big area out front where we could always put more chairs, so we get the capacity up, but it would be big enough that we could have dance, and we could have music, and we could have lots of things happening in here." And then, oh, well, it may have been that I was remembering how Fondren was when I was here as a student, because it was kind of a place that we worked in the middle and there were seats around the outside. I don't know where that idea came, but I just knew that
I love it. It
long,
was a great idea.
thing. But then, so they came back with it, and I loved it and said, "Yes, let's do this." So then the board came. And I said, "I'd like to call this hall Harambe." And they said, "What do you want to call it, Harambe?" Well, I'd been to Africa, and I knew that Harambe is this wonderful word that means we all pulled together, or we wouldn't have gotten it done, kind of thing. And I said, it just seems like it works for what you all have done and what we're doing, and maybe even what Nashville needs is some Harambe. So they agreed. I was sure some director would change that name before now.
Nope, not changing it. In fact, the last director, Sarah Wilkins, said, "I've left this for you to renovate." And I said, "Okay, I will do that." And so we've done that, but yes, that has been. And so it has been a joy talking with you, but I've got to ask you one last question.
Sure.
In the spirit of Belle Harris Bennett, if Belle Harris Bennett were alive today, from fiercely advocating for injustices against women and making sure that women had a place not only in the church but also in community, how would you say that women can discern the call of God on their lives now?
Well, and I've struggled with that, because sometimes our images are so clergy laden and so work laden that it's really not about a life. It's about a profession, or it's about what I want to do with my life, and what work, what do I want to do daily, kind of thing. And Belle Bennett, she was just a lay lady who believed that women Well, first of all, she believed we can't send women to the mission field if they don't have an education. Why would we
not
do
prepared.
that? Even if they're the spouse of this missionary, you don't send them over there. They can do things, but they have to have training. There's stories about her riding on the train or the bus, and she'd sit down beside somebody, and she'd tell them the whole story. And she's raising money for this thing, and she needs this and she needs that, and probably really scare these people to death. A stranger, you start asking. And one story is that some woman said, "Oh, that sounds really, really good, but I don't have any money with me." She said, "Well, that jewelry's pretty nice." But that's how much she believed
in what she was doing.
And what she was doing.
Yeah.
She had a passion for the world and the role that women could play in it, and the reality of us not preparing women to do it. So, in terms of that, I've struggled with the whole lay clergy thing because I'm such a strong lay person. But it's more than that. While I was here the first time, not as a student, but when I was here as a director, I would get calls from women who were really in a discernment process. I think they saw this place as a place for some of that to happen. And so I would always try to have conversations with them. So I remember this one woman, I said, "So what are you doing now?" And she said, "Oh, I'm a teacher." And I said, "What do you teach? Why are you teaching? All that." And to get her to admit that could be where God wants her to be was hard work, because she had been convinced that if she had a call,
that it had to be
she had to do something.
The call.
When I got my call, the only woman, I forgot to tell this part of the story, the only woman that I knew that ever talked about call was a little missionary from China. Oh. And I thought, well, maybe I was a missionary in China. But because there weren't a lot of images, there aren't a lot of models. That's why, I love the deaconesses, because the deaconesses understand that if they're in the hospital, or if they're in the school, or if they're doing church community work, they're there because they're ministering their call, but it doesn't require anything other than
this is what God has called me to do at this moment.
Yeah.
So you didn't get enough of Scarritt. You had to come back even after serving as dean of Drew Theological Seminary. You had to come back and serve again here at Scarritt. You really loved the place.
I do love the place. The Uber dropped me off out here when I came. I thought, oh, this does feel like, I won't say home. What this feels like is a sacred space. It feels like a place that I always kind of find myself. Yeah.
Well, we're so glad that you're back and having to have us sit down with us, and that we get to honor you as a legacy builder, because you really have lived out Belle Harris Bennett's vision.
Yeah. I never ask anybody for their jewelry, but
oh, you did? As much as we need. Of living it out, of training the laity, of being well trained, of being able
recognizing that we all need it.
Yeah.
That all of us are children of God, and all of us are called by God, and all of us are necessary for bringing in the kingdom.
Yeah. And that we're all God's hands and feet
exactly.
in the atmosphere. And so that's what we are called to do.
And I'm so happy that you're here.
Oh, bless God.
And I so much want you to thrive, and I don't want us to use you up, because it's a hard job, and I want, figure out how we support you. So.
Well, thank you. Well, we're going to, keep Scarritt standing as long as we can.
There you go.
Thank you so much as we continue to attempt great things for God and expect great things from God.
Absolutely.
Thank you.